Hello fellow devil hunters, this is DT here, and today we're going to just dive right into the topic of this video series. That being my first exposure to the Devil May Cry franchise and how the Sparta family has impacted my life throughout the years. So without further ado, let's begin our journey into hell at the castle gateway known famously in the underworld as
Malay Island.
My first experience with Devil May Cry came when I was 7. I couldn't afford to buy all the newest games, so even though I loved games and played the hell out of what I had, I never really bothered to check what was out there. Honestly, I don't know how I went about choosing a game to buy for a long time. I think I would just do what most kids did and chose based on box covers. With DMC, this wasn't the case. Perhaps a mere coincidence or a fated meeting, I happened to be in my grandmother's house one day when I spied my cousin who lived there playing a video game. I was intrigued, so like a moth to a flame, I was drawn in and asked him what he was playing, and there it was, DMC in all its glory. I found this game visually stunning immediately. The gothic aesthetics and dark musical tones of the game were mesmerizing. I was an avid Yu-Gi-Oh collector as a kid, and I played all the way up until Exceeds and merely examined the functions of pendulums and link summons from afar. I mentioned this because Yu-Gi-Oh was such an integral part of my childhood, and the thing that drew me into Yu-Gi-Oh was the same thing that drew me into DMC. That thing is the dark art, and no, I don't mean the dark arts. Clearly, I mean art that has dark, spooky themes. Yu-Gi-Oh captured me as a child because it was dark, fantasy-themed game. It had beautiful portraits of beasts and spells on every playing card. It was fun, it was beautiful, and most important, to me, it was cool. Even if most people I knew felt otherwise. It's those three things that drew me into Yu-Gi-Oh that I was fortunate enough to see subconsciously in DMC. I couldn't help but watch and envy as my cousin played through the first mission. The entire time, all I could think is, I have to play this. Luckily, right after the first mission, he let me play. I don't remember if I pestered him to try. At this point, it really doesn't matter. I got to take the reins and slay demons in this really cool character action game. I was hooked, and found myself playing from that point all the way up to Phantom. I was excited and then instantly mortified after finding the shotgun to hear the screeching and laughter of the death scissors. In a panic, I would jump mindlessly, trying to avoid them because of how scary they sounded and looked. An enemy that could hide in walls was my worst nightmare, and yet I couldn't stop playing. Even though I legitimately felt fear, I was captivated at the same time and wanted to see this game through, so I defeated them and made my way to Phantom, not realizing what this game had in store for me. What came next was a devilish surprise that I was not expecting. The devs knew that Phantom was coming up, but the player had no idea. For us, it was a blind traversal of a demonic castle with terror around every corner. Knowing this, I still found myself surprised with what came next. The devs decided to give a helping hand to the player by affording them new power. But that power came at a price. With the flip of a sword, you knew you were ready. To this day, this is still my favorite DMC kata. Phantom, at the time, was the coolest creature I have ever seen as a boss. At the time, I was deadly afraid of spiders, so the first boss being a giant talking spider would obviously strike fear in me. But oddly enough, Dante brushing Phantom off like he's just this tiny insignificant thing really put me at ease. It made me feel like I could handle this. By the way, I have to say, the effect they use for Phantom's voice is phenomenal, and the flip over him was a great way to start that boss fight off. I would talk about how the fight went, but I think we all know that with a game as hard as DMC, and me being 7, the fight did not bode well for me. I died, but that's okay, because dying only made me want to fight him again and again. I knew I could beat him, and I did by painstakingly going at it again and again till the beast was defeated, though not yet slain. Little did I know. After beating him, however, my cousin wanted to play the game again, so since it wasn't my game, I reluctantly gave him back the controller. He said I could stay and watch, but I opted out of doing that because I was so captivated that I did not want to spoil it for myself. Now, if you know me, I am never concerned about spoilers, even around that age. If you tell me what happens, I always found that it doesn't take away from the experience of watching the thing because you are still missing the visuals of the thing. With DMC1, however, as a kid, I do remember not wanting to hear anything from anyone until I got to play the game fully. I spent the next few weeks trying to get to play. I was playing in my backyard by myself, pretending I was Dante, slaying demons with Alistair and Ebony and Ivory. Metal pipes and broom handles were my friends, and my cousin knew this, so every time I asked him to play, he'd pull a, if you want to play, you have to do what I say kind of deal. So because I hated that as a kid, I just turned him down, refusing to buy into that bullshit. So for a few weeks, I was without my now favorite game. And to add to the injury, to the disappointment of not being able to play, an opportunity to get DMC came up within those weeks. I was at Walmart with my dad and his lady friend at the time. Her son wanted a game, and so we went to the game section. My dad surprised me and said I could get one too. You all already know what it was I was after. It had been on my mind for weeks. I looked through the shelves and there it was, DMC1. We get an employee to open the case and pull out our selections. And then, as if the cosmic realm was mocking me, my dad's lady friend at the time grabs the game and inspects the age rating, pointing out that DMC was considered out of my age range. I was so livid because my dad would have bought that for me, but she stuck her nose into it and decided to parent me when it's not her job. Obviously, despite my protest, my dad took her side, clearly because, getting some, if we're being honest. And he said, sorry, you can get something else. But I didn't want anything else. So I left the store depressed and empty-handed. I know, it's not smart, but I'm just that kind of guy. A week went by, and I was picked up by my mom to spend time with her. Oddly enough, we have to go to Walmart. When we passed by the electronics section, she noticed me staring. So she decided for us to go in. Clearly, she knew I wanted something, but she didn't know what. My mom was the reason I even had a PS2. She went out of her way to buy it for my brother and I. She tells me I can have one game. We call the store clerk to get DMC off the shelves. And for a second, yes, I finally get to own DMC. That's what I thought. Until suddenly she grabs the game and inspects the cover and finds that it's rated mature. Too mature for me. And she tells me to pick another game. By that time I was fed up. I had enough of this. So I looked my mom straight in the eye, done this a few times in my life, and I stood as tall as I could for a 7-year-old and said, "Mom, this is the game that I want. I have been waiting to beat it, but my cousin won't let me play. I am either getting this game or I am getting nothing. I don't want anything else." I thought for sure she was going to say, "Sorry, guess you're not getting anything then." Surprisingly, she said, "Alright," because she could tell how badly I wanted this. Maybe my cousin not letting me play was also a factor. Or maybe she was just doing it because she's trying to be a cool mom. Doesn't matter. I have never turned down a free game purchase since. But oh man, when I tell you I would have been even more depressed than I already was as a 7-year-old if that didn't go my way. Just thinking about it, I was in already like a bad state of mind, and yeah, it would have been even worse. I didn't have a lot of money growing up. My father was a day laborer, or is a day laborer, supporting my brother and I pretty much by himself. My mother and him were separated, and not to get into too much detail, but I was with my dad because my mom's life was not in the best of circumstances. Speaking solely on my behalf, I was rather depressed as a child and didn't know it. It stunted my growth as a youth up until adulthood. Don't get the wrong idea, I am a happy, life-loving individual now, but at that time in my life, I had no one to talk to about my problems and feeling openly. My dad would say that I could talk to him, but he's stubborn, so a lot of my time was spent in isolation, playing pretend by myself, imagining that I was someone else, or ironically sitting in the closet my dad built to read or play with toys or just anything in general. Sometimes I just needed to sit by myself because I didn't have privacy. And I did this until I grew to the point where I couldn't actually sit in the closet anymore. And it was primarily because I had no semblance of privacy. Needless to say, video games and books were my refuge. Without them, I would have possibly gone out of my way to die. Demon killing and other adventures are what kept me from making a huge mistake. That's why this game series has always meant so much to me. I had almost no friends. I struggled then, and even to this day, to socialize. And I was desperately seeking to find myself subconsciously as a child. It was a longer road than I was ready for. Luckily, I had one role model in red to guide the way in some small part. Dante, for the longest time in my life, was probably one of my major role models. I was never very cool, and, I'm only now coming into my own. And Devil's May Cry was one of those things that just helped keep my mind balanced. And so, not to beat a dead horse, this game really meant a lot to me. And I'm going to continue to talk about specifically the game. I just wanted the first portion of this video to be specifically dedicated to my earliest experiences involving DMC and myself. Because to me it was more than just a video game. It was an escape. And it was one that I desperately needed. I was very lucky to find this game. I'm not interested in making anyone depressed or to tell a sob story. It's just how it was for me as a child. So all I have to say is thank you for watching part 1 of this video series. If any of you out there know what it's like to be isolated and living in your own head at a young age, please take your time figuring things out. Being patient with yourself is always the best move. Life is tough and can take you to dark places, but there is not having friends, and I mean real friends, doesn't mean they won't come later. Acceptance and love are also in the cards, and it starts when you become patient with yourself and work towards accepting who you are. For me, that's a gay devil hunter who nerds out excessively with one of his best friends in the whole world about a niche video game series that's 20 years old, and for the longest time no one gave a rat's ass about except for a small minority of stylishly awesome people. Do what you love, and if you don't know what that is, then your first step should be figuring it out.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon for future notifications. Also, follow Dead Turo and Bayo on Twitch to keep up with their co-op speedruns and other activities. Remember, you can always unsubscribe later if you find the content is not for you. If, however, you enjoy slaying demons, perhaps you'd be interested in joining Dead Toro's Discord DT community chat to talk with fellow demon slayers like yourself. And if you want to help these devil hunters continue on their quest to seal the demon world for good, become a patron, as doing so allows Toro to frequent Bayo's home for cooperative DMC speedruns and combos. Links to everything down below.